I stood in the corner of the event hall, watching my brother Lucas raise his glass to celebrate his big promotion. Everyone laughed when he called my company a cute little startup. I didn't laugh. I just waited. Because in less than 5 minutes, the janitor would walk in and ask if I wanted him to lock my building. And that would be the last time anyone in this family ever underestimated me. The lights of Midtown Manhattan glittered through the tall windows of the Crown Towers ballroom, reflecting against rows of champagne glasses. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead. It was the kind of party where success smelled like perfume and ambition hummed beneath polite laughter. Lucas always loved being the center of attention. Tonight, the entire room revolved around him, the golden boy of the Park family, freshly promoted to regional director at Vertex Systems. Our mother Linda clung to his arm as though proximity to his achievement made her glow brighter. Our Lucas, she told anyone who would listen, so proud, so deserving. My father Daniel nodded with quiet satisfaction, as if this was proof of his perfect parenting. Beside them, Lucas's fiancée, Rachel Bennett, dazzled in a gold dress that screamed expensive and intentional. She laughed too loudly, kissed him too sweetly, and made sure her diamond caught every flash of light in the room. And me, I stood by the far wall in a simple black dress, sipping water instead of champagne. I had been here before this feeling of being present but invisible. The sibling who didn't fit the family mold. The daughter who made unconventional choices. My parents called me independent when they were being polite. When they weren't, they were stubborn. "Come on, Elena," Lucas called from across the room. "You can't just hide there all night. Come join the successful people." The crowd laughed. Even Rachel giggled behind her glass. I smiled faintly and crossed the room, each step measured, deliberate. He wrapped an arm around me, smelling of victory and whiskey. Everyone, he announced, "This is my sister Elena, still running her little tech company, Technova, right?" I nodded. "Still running it." Lucas smirked. "Well, good for you. It's nice to have hobbies." The laughter came again, polite but sharp enough to sting. My father chuckled. My mother's smile tightened, pretending it was just family banter. Rachel leaned in, voice dripping with condescension. "Maybe she can join Vertex someday," she said. "We're always looking for receptionists who have personality." My lips curved slightly. "Receptionists run the world, Rachel. You should be nice to them." Her laugh came out brittle. "Oh, I'll keep that in mind." I let the moment stretch, let them believe I was wounded. Silence is a powerful weapon when you know how to use it. They thought they were laughing at me. What they didn't know was that every toast, every joke, every champagne glass in this ballroom sat inside a building that I owned. I caught sight of the property management sign near the entrance, Astra Holdings, the quiet little company through which I'd purchased this skyscraper 2 years ago. They'd seen that name on their invitations tonight, printed beneath Crown Tower Management. None of them had connected the dots. Why would they? They never paid attention unless it involved Lucas. I could hear him now bragging to a cluster of investors about the article Forbes had just run Young Executive to watch. He basked in it the same way he always had when we were kids. He measured his worth in applause. I measured mine in ownership. When our mother approached, her smile faltered slightly at my expression. "Elena, sweetheart, don't take Lucas's jokes seriously. You know how he gets it." "I know exactly how he gets, Mom," I said softly. She hesitated, reading something in my tone she couldn't quite name. Then she patted my arm, the universal gesture for "please don't make a scene," and turned back to her guests. "Ladies and gentlemen." Lucas's voice boomed again. He stood at the center table, glass raised high. A toast to hard work, to family, and to the people who make us who we are. To my parents, for raising me right. To Rachel for saying yes. And to my sister, who reminds me every day that some people are better off dreaming small. The room erupted in laughter. I watched my mother beam, my father nod approvingly. Rachel leaned in to kiss his cheek. I felt no anger, just clarity. I let the laughter wash over me like static. Then the double doors at the back of the ballroom swung open. "Excuse me, ma'am," a voice said. The laughter died instantly. It was Sam, the night janitor. Gray uniform, keyring jangling at his hip, a kind face lined with years of night shifts. He looked directly at me. "Ms. Park," he said politely. "Do you want me to lock up the building now or after the guests leave?" Every head turned. Rachel's smile froze mid-giggle. Lucas blinked confused. "Wait," what he said, forcing a laugh. Sam looked around uncertain. "Sorry, I just wanted to check before securing the elevators." "You're the building owner, right?" The silence that followed could have cut glass. Lucas's hand trembled, champagne sloshing over his cuff. "She's lying." This is ridiculous." I met his eyes. "You should know me better than that, Lucas." My mother's face had gone pale. "Elena, what does he mean?" I smiled faintly, setting my glass down. "Just a misunderstanding, Mom." "Sam, go ahead and lock up once everyone's gone." "Yes, ma'am." He nodded, oblivious to the chaos he'd just unleashed, and left as quietly as he'd entered. The air in the room felt heavy, like the moment before a storm breaks. No one moved. No one spoke. Rachel tried to recover first. "Oh, come on," she said with a brittle laugh. "You're telling me your little startup bought a skyscraper?" I shrugged. "Something like that." Lucas's face flushed crimson. He turned to our father. "She's lying. This is ridiculous." My father didn't answer. He was staring at me as if seeing me for the first time. I held his gaze. "You once told me stability mattered more than risk. I chose risk. Seems it paid off." The orchestra in the corner kept playing softly, oblivious to the social earthquake unfolding in the center of the room. Rachel whispered something to Lucas, but his jaw clenched. My mother reached for her glass, hands trembling slightly. I stepped back from the table, the hem of my dress brushing the marble floor. "I should go," I said lightly. "It's getting late." No one stopped me. As I walked toward the exit, their silence followed like a shadow. The laughter, the superiority, all of it had evaporated. At the door, I glanced back. Lucas stood stiffly still, holding his glass. His reflection fractured in the mirror behind him. They didn't know it yet, but this was just the beginning. Outside the city hummed beneath me lights, taxis the pulse of possibility. I stepped into the cool night air and looked up at the glowing windows of Crown Tower, my name buried deep in its deeds and contracts. "They thought the night was about his success," I whispered to myself. "They had no idea it was about my revenge. They used to say I was born stubborn. My mother preferred the word difficult. My father called it unrealistic. But the truth is, I was just tired of being invisible in a family that worshipped appearances more than substance. 5 years ago, before the champagne and the laughter, before anyone knew my name outside our family, I was still Elena Park. The quiet daughter who followed rules, worked long hours at a Manhattan investment bank, and smiled politely while her brother stole every spotlight in the room. At work, I was efficient, dependable, and utterly forgettable. I wrote reports. No one read designed models that made other people rich and stayed late, fixing mistakes that weren't mine. At home, I was a supporting character in the Lucas Park show. One night, after another 14-hour day, I came home to find my family gathered in the dining room. My father sat at the head of the table, scrolling through emails between bites of steak. My mother arranged silverware with mechanical precision, and Lucas was already holding court, bragging about his new position at Vertex Systems. "Regional manager," my mother repeated proudly as if the title were holy scripture. "Can you believe it? At 30. Not everyone's cut out for corporate leadership," my father added. His eyes flicked toward me, pointed and brief. I took a sip of water, steady. "Actually, I wanted to talk about something too." Lucas smirked. "Please tell me you're not quitting your job again." "I'm not quitting," I said. "I'm building something of my own. A startup." The silence was immediate, sharp. My mother blinked, unsure if she'd heard correctly. My father set down his fork. "A startup," he repeated. "In what coffee crafts tech?" I said. "Financial technology. Blockchain security." Lucas laughed first. "Crypto? You mean that scam stuff? It's not a scam. It's infrastructure. Safer, faster transactions." My father cut me off with a dismissive wave. "Elena, you've got a solid career. Real benefits, a real paycheck." Why throw it away for some internet fantasy? Because I want to build something that's mine. My mother sighed as though I'd confessed to a crime. Sweetheart, stability matters. You can't just play with ideas. You need a husband, a future, something steady. Lucas raised his glass, smirking. To Elena's cute little tech dream, he said. May it last longer than her last promotion. That night I didn't argue. I just looked around the table and memorized their faces, my father's arrogance, my mother's pity, my brother's smug confidence. I promised myself I'd remember this moment when everything changed. I moved out a week later. My parents said it was a phase. Lucas told me to call when I wanted real advice. The first year was brutal. My startup NovaPay burned through every dollar I'd saved. Investors didn't take me seriously. They asked if I had a male co-founder or a husband to handle the technical side. When the market dipped, my funding evaporated. I maxed out 2 credit cards, sold my furniture, and worked from a second-hand desk in a studio apartment with paper-thin walls. When NovaPay collapsed, no one was surprised, except me. Lucas showed up at my door with a pitying smile. Told you, he said, glancing around my half-empty apartment. You should have stayed at the bank. You were good at taking orders. I didn't answer. I just closed the door. A week later, my mother called. You can always come home, she said gently. Your father says we'll cover your rent for a few months while you figure things out. No, thank you, I replied. I'll figure it out myself. They stopped asking after that. Months passed in silence. I worked part-time gigs, coded freelance projects, and spent nights teaching myself everything I could about blockchain architecture. I barely slept, barely ate. Failure had stripped away my pride, but it also burned off the fear. Then one evening, while scrolling through my emails, I saw a small invitation, Women in Blockchain Summit, Soho, New York. I almost ignored it. I couldn't afford the ticket, the clothes, or even the subway fare. But something inside whispered, go. The event was held in a converted loft filled with women who looked like they belonged, founders, engineers, venture capitalists. I stood near the back, clutching a cup of coffee like armor. That's when I met Nora Kim. She was a software engineer from MIT Labs, sharp and direct, with a confidence I envied. She noticed my badge. No company name, just Elena Park Independent. Independent, she said, smiling. That's brave? Or reckless, I replied. Same thing, she said, raising her coffee cup. One just pays better. We talked for hours. About tech, about inequality, about how people underestimate quiet women with big ideas. I told her about NovaPay, about the humiliation, about the way my brother laughed when I failed. She didn't pity me. She nodded. Then let's make sure they never laugh again. That night, Astrolink was born not in a fancy office or a boardroom, but over 2 cups of bad coffee and a promise between strangers. For the next 6 months, Nora and I worked out of a co-working space that smelled like burnt espresso and startup desperation. We built a prototype that could secure digital contracts using hybrid encryption. We pitched investors, collected rejections, and kept going. My family didn't know. I stopped telling them anything. When my mother called, I said I was freelancing. When Lucas bragged about his latest deal, I smiled and let him talk. Silence had become my camouflage. Sometimes I wondered if I was wrong for hiding. Then I'd remember the look on their faces that night at the dinner table, the certainty that I would never matter, and my doubt hardened into determination. A year after Astrolink launched, we signed our first corporate client, a logistics firm in Chicago. 6 months later, we partnered with a defense contractor to secure government data. And when an article in Business Insider called Astrolink the quiet revolution in digital trust, I sent the link to no one. My phone buzzed one afternoon while I was in the office, the number familiar but unwanted. Elena, my mother said cheerfully, we're having Thanksgiving at the country club this year. Lucas just got promoted again. You should come, dear. Bring your project. It's not a project, I said. Of course, she replied, not hearing me. Anyway, wear something bright this time. You always blend into the background. I looked at the city skyline through my office window, and felt a smile tug at the corner of my mouth. Don't worry, Mom, I said. This year I think they'll see me just fine. After I hung up, Nora looked over from her desk. Family event? Something like that, I said. A success party. She grinned. Yours or theirs? Does it matter, I asked. By the end, they'll know the difference. That night, I stayed late at the office finalizing the paperwork for our latest acquisition, a commercial property in Midtown Manhattan. The building was modest by Wall Street standards, but symbolic. It represented every dismissal, every smirk, every cute little startup that was never supposed to succeed. When the deal closed, I signed the final document with steady hands. The property deed bore one name, Astra Holdings, LLC. Astra Holdings was the entity Nora and I created to manage AstraLink's physical assets, making sure our corporate infrastructure was as secure as our code. It would take 2 years before anyone realized what those words meant. And on the night my brother raised his glass laughing about my little startup, I thought back to this moment, the moment I stopped being invisible. The moment I decided that the next time they laughed, it would be inside my building. The first thing Nora ever said when we moved into our new office was, "Smells like victory and burnt coffee." She wasn't wrong. The place was small, bare walls, flickering lights, and desks we'd bought off Craigslist, but it was ours. 2 women and one impossible dream. We called it AstraLink, named after the idea that trust could travel farther than fear. We started with nothing. No PR, no funding cushion, no family investors. Just sleepless nights and stubbornness. I coded until my hands cramped. Nora lived on takeout and energy drinks. When we finally built a working prototype, a hybrid blockchain system that could secure international transactions, in seconds we celebrated with vending machine wine. It tasted awful, but freedom always does at first. 6 months in, we landed our first seed investor, a quiet fund in Chicago that had once passed on NovaPay. They called it a redemption round. I called it revenge. The money was enough to hire 3 people, pay off our debts, and move out of the basement office. For the first time, the future didn't feel like a distant fantasy. It felt real, electric, alive. Still, I told no one in my family. To them, I was still freelancing, barely scraping by. It was easier that way. The less they knew, the quieter my peace. But silence doesn't last in families like mine. It was a Friday morning when my phone rang, my mother's name flashing across the screen. "Elena," she said brightly, "we're hosting a family dinner Sunday night. Lucas wants to introduce some important guests from his company. Be there at 7, Mom." "I'm in the middle of a product rollout." "It's just dinner," she interrupted. "Besides, Lucas said you've been distant. You don't want people thinking you're avoiding the family." That was always her trick, shame disguised as concern. "Fine," I said. "I'll come." By Sunday, I'd pulled together something simple. A navy dress, hair tied back, and my usual patience. Nora laughed when I told her. "You're walking into enemy territory again. Let's call it field research." The Park family dinners hadn't changed since childhood expensive food colder conversations. The long table gleamed under chandelier light. My father sat at the head as always, reviewing something on his iPad, while pretending to listen to my mother talk about the new golf club renovations. Lucas was already performing, surrounded by guests from Vertex Systems, 2 men in tailored suits, and 1 woman with the look of someone who never had to explain herself twice. When he saw me, his grin widened. "Well, look who decided to show up. Still doing your online project thing?" I smiled, unbothered. "Still building, yes." He poured himself another glass of wine. "That's cute. You know we've been developing a new blockchain department at Vertex. Maybe I'll hire you once it's ready." The table laughed. My mother laughed too quietly, but she laughed. I placed my napkin on my lap, calm. "You should make sure your company's tech team is up to date. I heard your blockchain pilot crashed last quarter." Lucas's smirk faltered for a split second. The woman beside him, the one with the sharp eyes, looked up intrigued. "Do you follow Vertex?" "I follow everyone," I said. "It's part of my job." My father raised an eyebrow. "And what exactly is your job these days?" "Elena?" Before I could answer, my mother stepped in with her usual diplomacy. "She's freelancing, dear. Tech consulting, isn't that right?" I nodded, letting her keep her illusion. There was no point correcting people who preferred their fantasies. Dinner continued full of polite questions and thinly veiled criticism. Lucas bragged about his company car, his fiancée's upcoming feature in a lifestyle magazine, and his new condo in Tribeca. I listened smiling when appropriate, sipping my water, while everyone else refilled their glasses. Then came the inevitable dig. Rachel leaned across the table, her diamond bracelet catching the light. "Elena, you should meet my cousin," she said sweetly. "He runs a little startup too. Maybe he can give you some pointers." I tilted my head. Maybe he can learn something instead. She blinked, caught off guard. My father cleared his throat. "Elena's sarcasm doesn't suit you." "I wasn't being sarcastic," I said simply. The silence that followed was thick enough to chew. Then Lucas chuckled, breaking it. "You've really gotten confident since that last failure of yours." "That's what failure's for," I said softly. "To make you quieter, stronger." He didn't have a comeback for that. After dinner, while everyone lingered over dessert, I slipped outside for air. The city skyline glowed across the river, each light a story I'd written for myself. My phone buzzed with a text from Nora. "We did it." I opened the message to see the press release link. Astralink secures major government data security contract. The article listed me as CEO and co-founder. I stared at the headline, the weight of it sinking in. I wasn't the invisible daughter anymore. I was a storm no one saw coming. When I returned to the table, my mother was whispering something to Lucas. Their laughter stopped when they saw me. "Everything all right, dear?" she asked, voice overly sweet. "Perfect," I said, taking my seat. "Just some good news from work." Lucas leaned forward. "Good news? About what, selling your startup for lunch money?" I smiled. "Something like that." The next few weeks moved fast. Astralink exploded and growth investors lined up, media requests poured in, and our office doubled in size. Forbes called us the stealth giant of blockchain. I ignored the interview request. The less attention, the better. I had other plans. By the end of the year, Astralink had enough liquidity to form a parent company, Astra Holdings. It was a quiet move, strategic and deliberate. Through it, I started acquiring commercial properties for data centers and tech hubs. One of them happened to be Crown Tower. The irony made me laugh. Lucas often boasted about hosting corporate events there. I signed the paperwork with a private grin. A few months later, he sent a family group text. "Big news, Vertex is hosting my promotion party at Crown Tower next week." My mother replied with a string of heart emojis. My father sent a terse, "Proud of you." I didn't respond at all. That night, I sat in my penthouse office, the city glowing beneath me, and reread the email confirming the final transfer of ownership. The ink was dry. The building was mine. Nora walked in holding 2 glasses of champagne. "We officially own half the skyline," she said, grinning. "Not bad for a couple of invisible women," I said. She clinked her glass against mine. "So what's next? You're going to tell your family?" I shook my head. "Not yet." "Why not?" "You've earned it." "Because timing matters," I said. "Let them keep thinking I'm small. The best revenge isn't proving them wrong. It's letting them prove themselves wrong." Nora smiled knowingly. "So when's the big reveal?" I looked out at the glittering lights of Manhattan, my reflection faint in the glass. "Soon," I said. "Very soon." The following week, my mother called again, excitement bubbling in her voice. "Elena, Lucas wants you to come to his celebration. It's at the Crown Tower Ballroom, such a lovely venue. You must come." "I wouldn't miss it for the world," I told her. After she hung up, I leaned back in my chair, eyes tracing the faint outline of the building in the distance. Crown Tower. I thought about every dinner, every smirk, every dismissal. The laughter that had once made me feel small now sounded like fuel. "Let them toast," I whispered. "I'll handle the lights." And when the night came and Lucas raised his glass to mock me one last time, the world would finally see who I'd become. One signature, one company, one skyscraper at a time. The cool air outside Crown Tower was a welcome shock after the suffocating silence I'd left behind. My exit was silent, unlike the explosion I'd just caused. I didn't look back. The satisfaction was already a warm, private heat in my chest. The janitor Sam had performed his part perfectly, and the family's fragile world had cracked. I drove away, watching the tower recede in my rearview mirror, a giant tombstone marking the end of their assumptions about me. Lucas's celebration was over, replaced by a crisis. I didn't feel like victory yet. Only silence. It was the deepest quiet I'd felt in years, a silence bought at a very high price. I felt the cold realization sink in. I was finally free of their expectations, but now I was completely alone. The Park family had always been my cage, but now that the door was open, the silence felt vast and unfamiliar. I reminded myself that freedom was better than comfort, no matter how cold the night. My phone rang before I hit the Midtown tunnel. It was Nora. I didn't go, but I heard the sound wave from here, she said, her voice laced with giddy excitement. Tell me everything. Did Lucas cry? Not quite, but his glass almost did, I replied, navigating the traffic. It went exactly as planned. Sam asked about locking the building and the room went silent. Brilliant. Now the real fun begins, the cleanup. What's the official corporate response? None yet. But give it an hour. Lucas just realized his promotion party was held in the house of his enemy. Nora paused. You know Daniel will call you first. He hates dealing with messes. She was right. My father, Daniel Park, measured respect by adherence to corporate protocol. Being embarrassed in front of his peers, the Bennetts, was a violation of his most sacred rules. He wouldn't yell. He would analyze. The call came 20 minutes later, just as I parked outside my apartment. His voice was low, controlled, the most dangerous kind of anger. Elena, he started, no preamble. What exactly happens tonight? I believe the janitor already explained it, Father. I own the building. That's not what I mean. I mean, why would you humiliate your brother like that in front of Rachel's family? Vertex executives were there. They were underestimating me. I corrected them. This isn't about correcting them. This is about stability and family reputation. Do you know what kind of rumors this will start? That the Park family is fractured, that we allow internal sabotage. Rumors don't affect a 500 million company, Father. They only affect Vertex and Lucas's ego. There was a pregnant pause. Vertex Systems is a valued partner of the Bennett Group. Did you consider the impact this stunt will have on Lucas's career, on his engagement? I consider Lucas's impact on my life every day, Father. And tonight, I simply returned the favor. He sighed, a deep, exasperated sound. Astra Holdings. I looked it up. Real estate acquisition. Why didn't you tell us? You stopped asking. When I failed with NovaPay, you all laughed. When I succeeded with Astralink, you assumed I was freelancing. You only see what Lucas shows you. I learned to work in the silence you created. We were trying to protect you from risk. No, you were protecting your image. And tonight, I shattered it. He hung up without saying goodbye. I sat in the dark, the city lights reflecting off my windshield. My family wasn't capable of understanding success built on quiet determination. They needed applause. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text from Lucas. Just one word, war. I smiled. He finally understood the game. I texted Nora, the cleanup has started. And Lucas just declared war. She replied instantly, good. Let's send him the first bill. The next morning, the first thing I did was instruct Astra Holdings' legal department to review the Vertex Systems lease agreement at Crown Tower. It was time to start using the ownership I'd revealed. The opening volley of my revenge wasn't just humiliation. It was calculated financial pressure. Lucas wanted a fight. I would give him an eviction notice. The text from my father. We need to talk. Remained unanswered. Some conversations require setting the terms first. I had already set the scene for the family, and now it was time to establish the terms of engagement for Lucas. I was in the office by 7:00 a.m. Nora was already there, mapping out a projected revenue forecast on the massive screen. She looked up, a triumphant smirk on her face. The internet is beautiful this morning, boss, she said. The chatter is deafening. Park family feud. Tech CEO owns Brothers Tower. The optics are incredible. Optics are just the stage, I replied, pouring coffee. I need action. Did legal forward the lease review for the 23rd floor, Right here, she said, pulling up a digital file. Vertex Systems Regional Office. Standard 5-year commercial lease due for a break clause review next quarter. Nothing egregious. Not egregious for them. Perfect for us. I pointed to the fine print. I want to execute the tenant review clause immediately. The one that requires an assessment of material changes in corporate risk profile. Nora raised an eyebrow. That's aggressive. Their risk profile hasn't changed. It has, I corrected, leaning over the screen. Their regional vice president, Lucas Park, has just been publicly embarrassed by the building owner, a tech competitor. That's a material operational risk. Our lawyers need to draft a letter citing a potential conflict of interest regarding confidential property and client data access. They have 48 hours to provide a comprehensive security review or face termination of the lease under the review clause. Nora grinned, her excitement palpable. A data security scare. Classic Astrolink. You're using their own lease against them to force a move. It's not a bluff. We have better data security protocols than their landlord did. If they want to play the game, they have to play by my rules. I spent the next 2 hours on calls with our legal team, meticulously planning the rollout. It wasn't about immediate eviction. It was about the cost of doing business with Elena Park. Around noon, my personal phone rang with an unrecognized number. I answered. Elena, it's Rachel. Lucas's fiancé sounded frantic, the carefully constructed elegance from the night before entirely gone. Hello, Rachel. I'm quite busy. Please. I had to call. Lucas is absolutely destroyed. He's with his lawyers. He says you're trying to ruin him. He started the fight, Rachel. I'm just finishing it. But this isn't fair. His promotion, it's hanging by a thread now. Vertex is furious that the story is everywhere, and now his boss is asking about his family stability. This affects our wedding. What do you want? I leaned back in my chair, the sunlight warming my face. This was the opening I needed. I want the truth to be the focus, Rachel. For years, Lucas's arrogance has been fueled by my parents' praise and my silence. Now they need to see what he's truly built without the golden safety net. But the building, that's just a piece of property, she pleaded. It's a symbol. And as of this morning, it's a liability for Vertex. Tell Lucas that Astra Holdings is highly concerned about the security of their data given the recent internal friction. Tell him the legal notice is on its way. I could hear her frantic breathing on the other end. You're serious. You'll really try to break their lease? I'm serious, I confirmed. He declared war. This is the first bill. I hung up, feeling a familiar clarity. Rachel was a weak link, and I had just used her to deliver the exact message and the legal threat I wanted Lucas to receive. No negotiation. Just pressure. Nora finished her work and looked at me, a mixture of awe and concern on her face. You just accelerated the conflict by 6 months. Are you sure you want to go this fast? Speed is the only advantage I have. They spent a decade underestimating me. I won't give them time to adjust. That evening, I finally answered my father's text. To be continued, Father. The price of stability is about to go up. The building notice was sent that night. The quiet revenge was over. The loud one had just begun. By the next morning, my phone had turned into a war zone of notifications. Missed calls from my mother. 3 texts from my father. 1 from Lucas. Just 2 words. You're disgusting. I stared at the screen for a long moment, then set it face down on the kitchen counter and poured myself another cup of coffee. Outside my penthouse windows, New York was just waking up, taxis honking, sunlight slicing between the skyscrapers I now partially owned. It was a good morning to let silence do the talking. By the time I reached Astralink's headquarters, Nora was already waiting in my office, 2 coffees in hand and a grin that was all mischief. So she said. Setting 1 cup down on my desk, I saw the headlines. Headlines, I asked, feigning innocence. She smirked and turned her tablet toward me. CEO revealed viral video captures billionaire sister shutting down her brother's success party. Below it, a still from the party, me standing calm, champagne in hand, while Lucas looked like his soul had just left his body. Oh, for God's sake, I muttered. Someone filmed that. Everyone filmed that, Nora said cheerfully. It's got over 4 million views on TikTok. The janitor's comment has its own meme page. I groaned. I didn't want this to go public. You didn't need to. Karma has Wi-Fi. She slid into the chair opposite me, crossing her legs. So what now? Do we issue a statement? Deny you own Crown Tower? No, I said. We don't feed gossip. It'll burn itself out. Except now, every outlet from Forbes to People magazine is calling you the silent billionaire sister. I couldn't help but laugh. That's better than what they used to call me. Nora grinned. The unemployed disappointment. Exactly. The intercom buzzed. Ms. Park, my assistant, said your father's here. He insists on seeing you. Of course he was. I exhaled and stood. Send him in. A few seconds later, Daniel Park walked through the glass doors, immaculate as always. Tailored suit, polished shoes, the faint scent of power and regret. He didn't even glance at Nora as she excused herself. Elena, he said, his tone clipped businesslike. We need to talk. I assumed this wasn't a social visit, I replied. Coffee. He ignored the offer and took a seat. You humiliated your brother. Publicly. He humiliated himself, I said. I just happened to be standing there. This, he gestured toward the tablet on my desk, is a disaster for our family. The Parks are being mocked across every major outlet. The Parks, I repeated softly. Or just your favorite one. His jaw tightened. Lucas may have been arrogant, but you went too far. Too far, I leaned back in my chair. After years of belittlement, mockery, and exclusion, I think I barely evened the score. He ran a hand through his hair, looking uncharacteristically unsure. You could have told us about your company, about the building, about any of it. You never asked, I said simply. You were too busy measuring me against your golden boy. That's not fair. It's not false either. He sighed heavily. Elena, I'm trying here. We all made mistakes. Made, I said. Past tense, he hesitated, then straightened. The point is this feud is hurting the family name. Investors are calling me, clients are asking questions. And that's my problem because you're part of this family whether you like it or not, he snapped. And reputation matters. I let the silence stretch before answering. My reputation's fine. In fact, it's never been better. He looked at me, really looked at me for once as if seeing something he didn't quite recognize. You sound like your mother, he said finally, always needing the last word. No, I said softly. I sound like myself. You just never listened before. He stood abruptly. We'll have dinner tomorrow. The whole family. We'll fix this privately before the press does. I'm not interested in fixing appearances, I said. You should be more concerned with the truth. He hesitated at the door, his back still to me. Lucas won't forgive you. I didn't do it for forgiveness. He didn't respond. The door shut quietly behind him, leaving me in the hush of the glass office. Nora slipped back in a moment later, eyebrows raised. So, that went well? As well as it ever does, I said. She dropped a folder on my desk. In better news, Forbes wants to feature Astralink in their Top 50 Women in Tech issue. That's prime visibility. You'd be alongside Tesla, Oracle, Amazon. Turn it down. Her jaw dropped. What, are you serious? Completely. I leaned forward, tapping the folder. Right now we stay quiet. Let the world talk while we build. She studied me for a long moment before nodding slowly. You really don't care about the spotlight, do you? I smiled faintly. I've lived without it my whole life. Turns out, you see more clearly in the dark. That evening I sat alone in my apartment, the city lights reflecting off the glass, like a second skyline. My phone buzzed with another text, this time from Rachel. I didn't know Lucas could be that cruel. I'm sorry. Then another. You didn't deserve it. I typed, it's fine. You deserve better too, but delete it before hitting send. Some truths weren't mine to deliver. The next morning brought another surprise, a letter on Astralink stationery hand-delivered. It was from Lucas. The handwriting was jagged, furious. You think you've won, but all you've done is destroy our family. No one will ever respect you now. You'll always be the sister who humiliated her brother to feel powerful. You're pathetic. I read it twice, then set it down unmoved. Power didn't come from what others thought, it came from what they could no longer take away. I slid the letter into a drawer and turned back to my laptop. There were contracts to review, deals to finalize, and a new acquisition proposal on my desk, a small financial firm with ties to Vertex Systems. I smiled as I read the name. Lucas wouldn't see this one coming either. By sunset, I'd signed the initial offer papers. Not because I needed it, but because it felt poetic, owning one more piece of the empire he thought was his. Later that night, Nora called. "You're trending again," she said, half amused, half exasperated. For what, this time? For being unbothered. Someone filmed you walking out of the Crown Tower ballroom. The caption says, "When they mock your little startup, but you own the skyline." I laughed quietly. Not bad. They're getting creative. "So what's next?" she asked. "What's the endgame here?" "Endgame," I said. "There isn't one. I'm not playing chess anymore. I'm building cities while they're still arguing over the board." She was silent for a beat. "You know," she said, "finally sometimes I think revenge wasn't your goal. It was freedom." Same thing I said. After we hung up, I stood at the window again, the city spread out beneath me like a living map. Somewhere below, Lucas was probably still angry. My parents were probably still whispering about how to fix the family's image. Let them. I'd spent years trying to fit into their definition of success, quiet, polite, dependent. They'd wanted a daughter who knew her place. Instead, they got a woman who owned the ground beneath their feet. And for the first time in my life, I didn't just feel seen. I felt untouchable. The invitation to dinner came by email, not phone. That was my first clue it wasn't really a request. The subject line read, "Family dinner. Urgent." My father's assistant had even CC'd my mother. That's how I knew it would be bad. I stared at it for a long time before replying with one word: confirmed. When Friday night came, I almost canceled. But curiosity is a powerful motivator, and besides, I wanted to see how far they'd go to save face after last week's ballroom fiasco. The restaurant was one of those old-money Manhattan places, with white tablecloths, mahogany walls, and waiters who whispered like priests. I arrived 5 minutes early, mostly to avoid being paraded in late like a misbehaving child. They were already seated. My father in a navy suit, my mother in pearls and forced grace. And Lucas, of course, he was there, staring at the menu like it was a contract he planned to win. "Elena," my mother said, rising slightly, her smile brittle. "You look successful." "Thanks," I said, slipping into my chair. "You look rehearsed." Her laugh came a half-second too late. My father cleared his throat. "Let's not start with sarcasm. We're here to talk like adults." "Is that what we're doing?" I asked. "Because the last time we talked, I was being publicly disowned." His jaw tightened. "You know that's not true." "Oh, I remember it pretty clearly." Lucas slammed his menu shut. "Can we skip the dramatics? We all know why we're here." I raised an eyebrow. "Do we?" He leaned forward, eyes gleaming with barely concealed anger. "You humiliated me, Elena. At my celebration. In front of my team. My fiancé's family. I've been cleaning up the mess for days." "Cleaning up the mess," I repeated softly. "You mean spinning the story?" He glared. "You didn't have to show off. You could have told us privately. But no, you had to make it public. You wanted to make me look small." I smiled faintly. "Lucas, you managed that all on your own." "Enough," my father snapped. "We're not here to fight." "Then what are we here for?" I asked. He exchanged a quick glance with my mother before answering. "Damage control." There it was. My mother placed her napkin delicately on her lap. The family name has been dragged through gossip and speculation. The Parks are known for integrity, unity. We can't have the world thinking we're divided. I almost laughed. "You are divided. You did that, not me." "Elena," she said softly, her voice pleading now, "Darling, please. We just need to get ahead of this story. Issue a joint statement, perhaps an interview with Forbes. Talk about how close you and your brother are, how proud we all are of each other." I tilted my head. "You want me to lie?" "It's not lying," she said quickly. It's managing perception. Spin, I said. You want me to spin the truth because it makes you uncomfortable. My father sighed heavily. This is about the business world, Elena. Appearances matter. You may think you can operate in isolation, but family reputation impacts everything: networking, partnerships, investor trust. And yet, I said, sipping my wine, Astralink's valuation tripled this week. Investors seem fine with a little family drama. Lucas laughed bitterly. You think money makes you invincible? No, I said. It makes me independent. His smile faded. You really enjoy this, don't you? Watching us squirm. I don't enjoy it, I said, setting my glass down. I just stopped apologizing for existing. My mother tried again, her voice gentle, controlled. You have to understand, sweetie. We only wanted the best for you. We worried about your choices working in tech, starting companies with no stability. I cut her off. You mean choices you couldn't control? Her composure cracked. You were reckless. I was ambitious, I corrected. There's a difference. Silence. The kind that presses on the air like a weight. Finally, my father spoke again, tone sharp with authority. Regardless, this public tension ends now. The media attention is making us look like amateurs. So here's what's going to happen. You'll attend a joint event next week, hosted by the Park Foundation. You'll say a few words about family unity, acknowledge Lucas's promotion, and show gratitude for our support. We'll announce a charitable collaboration between Astralink and the Foundation. It will reframe the narrative. I leaned back slowly, studying him. You've already planned it all, haven't you? It's the right move, he said. It helps everyone. Everyone, I repeated. Except me. Elena. My mother pleaded, this is bigger than you. Think of the family. I stared at them, feeling something shift in my chest, not anger, not hurt, just clarity. Do you hear yourselves? I asked quietly. You're not proud of me. You're afraid of me. Afraid I don't need you anymore. No one spoke. I continued, my voice steady. You spent years dismissing me, mocking me, ignoring me. Now that I'm useful again, now that the world knows my name, you want to reclaim me. Like I'm some lost asset to fold into your portfolio. My father's expression hardened. That's not what this is about. Yes, it is, I said. It always has been. I stood up, pushing my chair back with deliberate calm. You want a statement? Here's one. I built something real. Something you never believed in. And I don't owe anyone a performance to make it palatable. Elena. My mother said softly, almost broken now. Please don't walk away again. I paused, hand on the back of my chair. I never walked away. You just stopped looking in my direction. Then I turned to Lucas. He looked lost for once, not angry, just lost. I didn't buy that building to humiliate you, I said. I bought it because I saw potential where no one else did. The same way I once saw it in you. He didn't respond. His eyes flicked down to the table, shame flickering there, brief and real. Good luck, Lucas, I said quietly. You'll need it. For a fraction of a second, I saw past the arrogance and shame of the little boy who used to sneak me candy under the dinner table when Mom and Dad weren't watching. That boy was gone. Maybe he needed to be. I pushed the memory away and walked out. I walked out of the restaurant, the sound of my heels echoing through the marble foyer. Outside, the city lights looked brighter, sharper against the night sky. As I waited for my car, my phone buzzed again, a message from Nora. The board meeting moved to Monday. Also, rumor says Vertex is looking for a new partner. Interested, I smiled to myself. Always, I replied. When the car pulled up, I looked back through the restaurant window one last time. My parents were still seated motionless. Lucas had his head in his hands. For a long time, I'd thought revenge meant proving them wrong. But standing there, I realized it wasn't about that anymore. It was about proving myself right. The driver opened the door and I slid in, feeling the weight of that truth settle like calm water. Some families chase appearances. Some build legacies. Mine taught me how to own everything they thought I couldn't. The fallout came faster than I expected. By Monday morning, half of Manhattan's business circuit had heard about the disastrous family dinner. Apparently, a well-placed source from the Park Foundation staff had leaked snippets of our conversation, edited, of course, to make it look like I was the arrogant one refusing reconciliation. The headline on page 6 read, "Tech heiress turns on family sources say power has gone to her head." I almost laughed. Power had always been in my head. I just stopped hiding it. Nora burst into my office mid-morning holding her tablet like it was evidence in a trial. "They're spinning it," she said. "Your brother's fiancé's PR team has been feeding statements to the press all weekend." "Let me guess," I said, scrolling through my inbox. The poor, humble family betrayed by their cold, distant CEO sister. She nodded grimly. "Pretty much. Rachel's father even gave an interview called Lucas, a rising star with family challenges." "Family challenges," I repeated. "That's a creative way of saying your sister owns your office lease." "This isn't funny, Elena," Nora said. "They're trying to bury you under your own success. The press loves a female villain in heels." I sighed, leaning back. "And what do you suggest I do? Hold a press conference? Cry about how misunderstood I am?" She dropped the tablet on my desk, frustration written across her face. "No, but you can't let them control the narrative. This isn't just about gossip, it's about influence. If enough people believe you're unstable or power-hungry, it could affect future contracts." I stared at her for a long moment before speaking. "Then maybe it's time I remind them who built the narrative in the first place." Her brow furrowed. "What are you planning? Something they can't spin," I said. "Something they'll have to respect." By afternoon, I was on a call with our legal team. The acquisition I'd quietly begun the week before, a small financial analytics firm tied to Vertex Systems, was ready to move forward. "I want the press release ready by Thursday," I told my attorney. "Emphasize growth stability and market innovation. And include a note about Astralink's partnership with Crown Tower for our new AI research division." He hesitated. "That will confirm public speculation that you own the building." "Good," I said. "Let's make sure everyone knows exactly whose name is on the deed." When the call ended, I felt something I hadn't in weeks control. Not revenge, not defiance, just quiet, absolute control. That night, the family group chat, silent for years, suddenly came alive. "Dad, we need to talk." "Mom, this has gone too far, Elena. Your actions are hurting the family foundation's reputation." "Lucas, congratulations on destroying what little dignity we had left." I read them all, then typed one short reply. "Me. The difference between dignity and denial is ownership." And I hit send. By Tuesday, the air was electric. Business news outlets were covering Astralink's acquisition, calling it a decisive move by the tech world's quiet powerhouse. Investors were impressed. Competitors were cautious. And my family, they were furious. Around noon, my assistant knocked softly. "There's someone here to see you," she said. "Who?" She hesitated. "Your brother." I exhaled slowly. "Send him in." Lucas looked different. Less polished, more desperate. His tie was loose, his hair slightly disheveled. For once, the corporate armor was cracking. "You've really done it now," he said, walking in without invitation. "Congratulations." "For what exactly?" "For turning my entire career into a joke." I folded my hands. "I didn't make you a joke, Lucas. You did that the moment you let ego write your story. You think you're better than everyone," he said, his voice trembling. "Dad's furious. Mom's humiliated. And Rachel, I asked. "What about her?" She left," he said, his tone flat. "Called off the engagement. Said she can't handle the scrutiny." For a second, I almost felt sorry for Ansem, almost. "I didn't ask her to," I said quietly. "You didn't have to," he snapped. "You humiliated her family. You humiliated me." "Lucas," I said, standing slowly, "you spent years belittling me, mocking me. You told people my startup was a hobby. You laughed at me at your own party. And now you want to talk about humiliation." He flinched, but I didn't stop. "I built something without your help. Without Dad's money, without Mom's approval. I built it because I was done waiting for permission." That's not humiliation. That's survival. He stared at me, anger shifting into something darker, fear. You've changed, he said quietly. No, I said. I finally stopped pretending. He turned to leave, then paused at the door. You'll regret this, he said. You always do. I didn't answer. There was nothing left to say. That evening, I sat in the conference room overlooking the city, finalizing the acquisition documents. Nora joined me carrying a folder and a bottle of wine. Thought you might need this, she said, setting both down. I smiled faintly. You always know. She poured 2 glasses. So what's next? You've taken your brother's company's floor, their PR spin, and their dignity. What's left? I stared out at the skyline, the city lights flickering like tiny secrets. What's left, I said softly, is peace. She tilted her head. And you think you'll find it? I think I said, I'll build it. The next day, Forbes ran a new headline. Astralink expands empire. CEO Elena Park acquires strategic assets from rival Vertex Systems. And underneath it, a single line that made me smile when others mocked her. Little startup, she quietly bought the skyline. My mother called that night. Her voice trembled between anger and awe. You're making enemies, Elena, she warned. No, I said softly. I'm making boundaries. You can't cut us out forever. I'm not cutting you out, I said. You did that years ago. I just stopped reopening the door. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then she sighed. Your father wants to meet again. I'm sure he does. He says it's business. I laughed quietly. It always is. After we hung up, I looked out at Crown Tower, its windows glowing against the night sky. Somewhere inside, people were working, late engineers, cleaners, dreamers, the ones who never got credit but kept the lights on. I admired them. I understood them. Because once I'd been one of them. And that's when I realized something. Revenge wasn't what I wanted anymore. Not power, not validation. What I wanted, what I'd been building all along, was freedom. Freedom from being underestimated. From seeking approval. From pretending to be less so others could feel more. As the city hummed beneath me, I whispered to the glass, almost smiling. Let them talk. I've got work to do. And for the first time in years, I meant it. The Forbes office in Midtown felt different from the rest of Manhattan, quieter, more deliberate, as if the entire building was holding its breath. The receptionist smiled politely as she handed me my visitor badge. Conference room B, Ms. Park. They're waiting for you. Of course they were. They'd probably been waiting since the video went viral. I adjusted the cuff of my tailored jacket, checked the faint reflection in the glass wall, and walked in. Inside were 2 people, a young assistant with a tablet and a senior editor in a charcoal suit, his expression a blend of curiosity and caution. Elena Park, he said, standing to shake my hand. Thank you for coming. I know things have been eventful for you lately. That's one word for it, I said. He smiled faintly. Let's get straight to it, shall we? The recorder on the table clicked on. Your story has fascinated people, he began. The woman mocked her little startup, who turned out to own the very building her brother worked in. It's poetic, viral, but behind that story, who is Elena Park, really? The question was designed to disarm me. I didn't blink. Someone who stopped waiting for permission. He chuckled softly. That's a good line. May I use it? You already have. He leaned forward, elbows on the table. Let's talk about the party. Did you plan that moment? I met his gaze evenly. No. I didn't plan for my brother to mock me. I didn't plan for the janitor to ask about locking the building, but I also didn't plan to apologize for any of it. He nodded, scribbling notes. You've become a symbol online. The underestimated woman who wins quietly, then reveals it in one devastating moment. How does that feel? I took a slow breath. Honestly, it feels strange. I never built Astralink to prove anything to anyone. I built it because I wanted to create something real. The rest happened. But you must have known what owning that building would mean, he pressed. It's not a coincidence, is it? I smiled slightly. Let's just say the universe has a sense of humor. The assistant looked up from her tablet. Do you regret how public it's become? The family conflict? The headlines? No, I said. Regret is for people who still need approval. I stopped needing that a long time ago. There was a brief silence, the kind that hung heavy with unspoken admiration. Then he leaned back, changing tone. Tell me about your company, he said. Astralink's valuation jumped 35% after your acquisition last week. Some analysts are calling you the most strategic CEO in the sector. Others say you're ruthless. Ruthless, I repeated. That's what they call women who don't flinch. His lips twitched. And your family? How have they responded to your success? I hesitated just long enough for him to notice. They're adjusting. Adjusting. I folded my hands. When you've been underestimated long enough, people don't know what to do once you stop shrinking. He studied me for a long moment, then smiled faintly. You're not like the others we interview. Most CEOs talk about legacy profit disruption. You talk about liberation. Maybe that's my kind of disruption. The assistant stylist hovered midair. I could see the headline forming in her mind. Liberation as disruption inside the empire of Elena Park. When the interview wrapped, the editor stood and shook my hand again. Thank you, Ms. Park. I think this will be one of our most read pieces this quarter. I'm sure it will, I said. Outside the air was cold, the city electric with its usual pulse. My driver opened the car door, but I didn't get in immediately. Across the street through the glass of a cafe, I spotted a familiar figure, Lucas. Alone nursing a coffee, staring at his phone like it had betrayed him. For a moment, I just watched. He looked smaller somehow, not physically, emotionally. The weight of public failure had carved something new into him. My driver followed my gaze. Should I wait? I shook my head. No, let's go. As the car pulled away, my phone buzzed. Nora again. The Forbes interview is trending already. Their teaser quote is everywhere. When you've been underestimated long enough, people don't know what to do once you stop shrinking. I smirked. Let them chew on that. Also, she added, your brother's company just announced layoffs. Looks like they're not handling the market shift well. I stared out the window. That's not my problem. But a flicker of guilt still slipped through. That night I couldn't sleep. I poured a glass of wine and stood by the window, the skyline gleaming below like circuitry. Success should have felt like peace. Instead, it felt like standing at the top of a mountain you built yourself and realizing you were the only one there. I opened my laptop and pulled up the internal analytics dashboard. Numbers, growth charts, projections, all clean, all perfect. The kind of data that made investors salivate. And yet something felt off. A notification pinged. A message from Nora tomorrow's investor dinner at the Metropolitan Club, you're confirmed. The board wants you to bring a personal statement about Astralink's mission beyond profit. Beyond profit, I murmured. The words lingered like a challenge. Because truthfully, I'd built Astralink as both an escape and a weapon, a way to prove something. But maybe it was time it became more than that. The next morning, I arrived at the club in a black suit sharp enough to cut glass. The boardroom was filled with investors, media, and industry heads. The same people who had once dismissed my early funding requests now watched me like disciples. The moderator smiled. Ms. Park, would you like to share a few words about Astralink's philosophy? I stood, holding their gaze one by one. Astralink was never about beating competition, I began. It was about changing the language of power. For too long, people like me, women outsiders, dreamers, were told to think smaller. I built Astralink to show that small doesn't mean insignificant. It means underestimated. The room was silent. Then applause. Slow, deliberate, genuine. As I sat back down, Nora gave me a subtle nod from across the room, that look that said, you did it. Later, as we stepped out into the crisp evening air, she asked, do you ever think they'll stop underestimating you? I smiled faintly. I don't need them to. Why not? Because every time they do, I said I win again. The driver opened the car door. As I slid inside, I caught my reflection in the tinted glass, calm, controlled, unshaken. The world was learning my name. But for the first time, I realized something more powerful than recognition. I didn't just own the building, I owned the narrative. The first sign of change came on a rainy Thursday morning when my assistant handed me a stack of letters. Not emails. Letters. Thick envelopes with elegant handwriting and expensive stationery. They came through the office courier, she said. From your family. I stared at them, unsure whether to laugh or roll my eyes. For years, they'd ignored my existence, dismissing my work as a hobby. Now, after the Forbes interview and the viral quote, they suddenly remembered my address. I took the top one and slid my finger beneath the seal. The paper smelled faintly of Chanel No. 5, my mother's signature. Dearest Elena, your father and I have been reflecting on how things unfolded. We may have been too harsh, too proud. The family would love to reconnect. Perhaps dinner next week? At home, not the club, just us. Love, Mom. Love. That was rich. The next letter was from my father. His handwriting was sharp and efficient, like a man signing contracts with his own children. Elena, I read your interview. Impressive. You've grown into a capable businesswoman. I'd like to discuss potential collaboration between Astralink and the Park Foundation. We can rebuild the family's public image together. Rebuild the family's image, not mine. Theirs. Always theirs. The third letter, smaller and messier, was from Lucas. I was wrong. I know you won't believe that, but I was. Rachel left. The company's tanking. And Dad's already blaming me for the market losses. I don't have anywhere else to turn. Please, if you ever cared about me as your brother, call me. For a long time, I didn't move. I just sat there, the rain streaking the glass, the letters splayed across my desk like the ghosts of a life I'd buried. Do you want me to respond? My assistant asked quietly. Not yet, I said. Let them sit. By afternoon, the world had other plans. Nora burst into my office, her face pale. You need to see this. She tossed her tablet onto my desk. On the screen was a breaking news banner, Park Foundation faces investigation over misused funds. I read the first paragraph twice. The foundation had been under quiet scrutiny for months. Donations redirected, tax irregularities, misuse of endowments. The article cited anonymous sources, but I knew exactly what that meant. Someone inside the old network had finally started talking. Your father's name is all over this, Nora said. And Lucas, too. He's listed as an executive consultant. I closed my eyes for a moment, steadying my breath. This isn't my problem, I said finally. She looked at me like she didn't believe it. Maybe not. But the press will make it your problem if you don't say something. I'll think about it. That night I didn't go home. I stayed in the office staring at the skyline until the sun came up, memories flooding in my father, lecturing me about responsibility, my mother fussing about appearances, Lucas smirking when I told him about my startup. And then that night at his party when the janitor called me ma'am. Funny how quickly the power shifts when the truth finally has a microphone. By morning, reporters were camped outside the Park Foundation headquarters. My inbox was flooded with media requests, all asking the same question. Would Astralink CEO Elena Park comment on her family's financial scandal? I crafted a single statement: Astralink is an independent entity. I have not been affiliated with the Park Foundation for several years. Our mission remains rooted in transparency, innovation, and accountability. I sent it, closed my laptop, and poured myself a coffee. 2 hours later, my father called. Elena, he said, without greeting, his voice clipped. I assume you've seen the headlines. I have. This is a misunderstanding. A smear campaign. Is it? I asked. Because it looks like your book's finally caught up to your ethics. He exhaled sharply. We need to show unity, Elena. The press is already speculating that the family's divided. If you speak publicly on our behalf, no. He froze. What did you say? I said no. I'm done cleaning up your messes. You made your choices, and I made mine. Elena. This is your family, I laughed softly. You only remember that when you're in trouble. You're being short-sighted, he snapped. You think success makes you untouchable. But reputation is what you use to control people, I finished. Not anymore. I hung up before he could respond. The following day, the Wall Street Journal ran an exposé on the foundation's finances. The numbers were ugly millions redirected through shell nonprofits' executive bonuses disguised as charitable expenses. Lucas's name appeared in 3 separate transactions. That evening, I received a text from him. "They're saying I'll be charged. Dad's cutting me off. Please, I don't know what to do." I typed deleted, then typed again. "Face it. Take responsibility. That's what adults do." He didn't reply. 2 days later, I found him in my office lobby. His suit was wrinkled, his eyes red, his hands shaking. "I didn't know," he said before I could speak. "I swear, Elena. Dad told me everything was legal. I just signed what he put in front of me." I studied him carefully. "You signed, though?" He nodded miserably. "What do you want from me?" I asked. "Help, please. A lawyer, advice, anything. I'll pay you back." "You can't afford me," I said quietly. His expression twisted, pain and shame colliding. "You don't have to enjoy this." "I don't," I said truthfully. "But I warned you years ago. The difference between us, Lucas, is I learned from the way Dad used people. You became him." He flinched. "So that's it. You're just going to watch me fall." I hesitated. For a moment, I saw flashes of the boy he used to be, the one who used to sneak me candy during long family dinners, who once said he'd always protect me. "Maybe you need to fall," I said softly. "That's the only way you'll learn who you really are." He left without another word. Later that week, my attorney informed me that the Park Foundation had been formally charged. My parents were facing investigation. Lucas had resigned his position. The empire they'd built on control and image was crumbling. And for the first time, I didn't feel vengeance. I felt closure. The next morning, as I prepared for an investor summit, Nora walked in holding a folder. "Before you go, there's something else." She handed it to me, a legal notice. My father was dissolving his partnership shares. His company was liquidating assets. And among them was Crown Tower. "Wait," I said, scanning the document. "He's selling the building, yes. Everything he can. He's desperate." I smiled faintly. "Then I'll make him an offer." Nora blinked. "You're serious?" "Completely. He built his reputation on owning things. Let's see how it feels when I own his last symbol." By week's end, the deal was done. Crown Tower was officially mine, every floor, every square inch. That night, I stood on the rooftop terrace. The city sprawled beneath me, rain misting against my face. This was where it all began. The party, the laughter, the humiliation, the janitor's question that froze a room. Now it was silent, peaceful, mine. I closed my eyes and breathed in the damp air. Somewhere deep down, a younger version of me, the one who'd been laughed at, doubted, ignored, finally smiled. Not because she won, but because she survived. And as thunder rolled across the skyline, I whispered to the night. The tables turned, and this time they stayed that way. The invitation arrived on cream paper embossed with gold lettering as if elegance could erase history. Family dinner. Homecoming, it read. My mother's handwriting beneath it was softer than usual, uncertain. "Please come. We need to talk." I almost threw it away. But something about those 4 words, "we need to talk," lingered. They'd never asked to talk before. They'd only ever commanded, lectured, or dismissed. So against better judgment, I went. The Park family mansion hadn't changed. The same marble steps, the same manicured hedges, the same looming portraits of ancestors who'd built their fortune on other people's labor. But now the lights were dimmer. The gates creaked. The grandeur had started to rot around the edges. Margaret, our longtime housekeeper, opened the door. Her face brightened when she saw me. "Miss Elena," she said, eyes glistening. "It's been too long." "Too long," I agreed, stepping inside. "How have you been?" She hesitated. "Still here keeping things together." Her eyes flicked toward the dining room, then back to me. "They're waiting." Of course they were. When I entered, silence fell. My father sat at the head of the long oak table looking older, smaller. My mother sat beside him, her pearls noticeably absent. And at the far end, Lucas. He looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. "Elena," my father said stiffly. "Thank you for coming." I took my seat without answering. The air smelled faintly of candle wax and desperation. My mother cleared her throat. "We know things have been difficult." "Difficult," I repeated. "That's one word for financial fraud." She flinched. My father's jaw clenched. "We didn't bring you here for sarcasm," he said sharply. "Then what did you bring me here for?" He hesitated, then exhaled slowly. "To ask for your help." I almost laughed. "You want my help?" "Yes," he said simply. "The foundation is being dismantled. Our assets are tied up in litigation. We're losing everything. The family name is tarnished. And you think I can fix it," I said. "You can," he said. "You have influence now. Power, resources. If you would publicly support us, say that you believe in our integrity, that the allegations were exaggerated, it could help." I stared at him, then at my mother, who was nodding eagerly. "You think I should lie to you?" "It's not lying," she said quickly. "It's protecting what's left of this family." I laughed softly. "Protecting the family is what I did for years. You just didn't notice." "Elena, please," my mother said. "This isn't about pride anymore. It's survival." I looked at Lucas. He hadn't said a word yet. He just sat there, hollow-eyed, staring at his hands. "Lucas," I said, "what about you? Do you agree with them?" He finally looked up. His voice was hoarse. "I don't know what I agree with anymore. You're still working with Dad." He shook his head. "No, I'm done." That caught me off guard. "I sold my shares last week," he continued quietly. "Paid off what I could. I'm moving out of New York." My father's head snapped toward him. "You what?" "I'm done, Dad. I can't keep pretending we're untouchable." "We're not." For a moment, the old patriarchal fury flashed across my father's face. Then it faded, replaced by something else, weariness. I turned to my mother. "And you?" She looked down at her plate. "Your father's right. We made mistakes. But families should stay together." I took a slow breath. "You only want to stay together when it benefits you, Elena." "No," I said, my voice steady now. "You spent my entire life teaching me that love was conditional, that success only mattered if it was yours. Now that I've built something of my own, you call it arrogance. Now that you've fallen, you call it family." My father's voice dropped low, controlled. "We're still your parents." "I know," I said. "And I'll always wish that had been enough." The silence that followed was heavier than any argument. Finally, I pushed my chair back. I didn't come here to fight, or to gloat. I came to say goodbye properly. "Goodbye," my mother whispered. "Yes," I said softly. "To the version of you that couldn't see me. To the version of me that needed you to." "Elena, you can't just walk away," my father said, rising. "I'm not walking away," I said. "I'm just not standing still anymore." I turned toward the door. "Elena," Lucas said suddenly. I stopped. He stood, his voice breaking slightly. "I meant what I said. I was wrong. About everything. You deserved better from all of us." For a moment the room blurred around me. I nodded once. "Thank you." And then I left. Outside, the night air was sharp, the moon breaking through the clouds like a quiet witness. My car was waiting, but I didn't get in right away. I stood on the steps, looking back at the mansion, a place that had always felt more like a museum than a home. Margaret stepped out after me, wiping her hands on her apron. "You did the right thing, Miss Elena," she said. "Did I?" I asked softly. She nodded. "Sometimes the only way to fix what's broken is to stop trying to mend it." I smiled faintly. "Thank you, Margaret. Always proud of you," she said. "We all are the ones who saw you for who you were." Her words sank deep, gentle, and grounding. When I finally got into the car, Nora's voice came through my phone over the car speaker. "You okay?" "I think so." "Big board announcement tomorrow." "Are you sure you're ready?" I looked out the window at the shrinking silhouette of my family's house. "More than ever." She hesitated. You sound lighter. I am, I said, for the first time in my life. The next morning, the New York Times published a new headline: Crown Tower CEO launches the Astra Foundation, a new era of ethical innovation. The article detailed my initiative, a program funding startups led by underrepresented founders, promoting transparency, mentorship, and equality. The kind of foundation that stood for everything the old park legacy never did. By evening, my inbox was full of congratulations. Investors wanted in. Universities wanted partnerships. And then one last message came through from Lucas. I saw the news. It's incredible. I'm proud of you, sis. Really proud. I'm heading to Denver next week, starting over. Maybe I'll finally build something honest. I typed back, good. You'll be fine. We both will. As I hit send, I realized I wasn't angry anymore. Not even a little. The story that began with mockery, betrayal, and humiliation had finally come full circle. The little startup, the janitor, the frozen smiles, the empire. It all led here to peace. That night I stood by the window of my penthouse office watching the lights of Crown Tower shimmer like a constellation of second chances. Somewhere inside that building, a janitor I once thanked was locking the doors again. Maybe he still remembered that night. Maybe he didn't. Either way, I smiled and whispered to the glass, "Thank you," because sometimes the smallest voices in the room hold the biggest truths, and this time, I was finally listening. The first snowfall of December dusted the city in quiet silver. I was standing on the balcony of my office, my building, watching the flakes drift past the glowing Astralink logo that crowned Crown Tower. Below, people hurried through the streets, bundled in coats and scarves, unaware that this was where everything had once come undone for me. I still remembered that night, the laughter, the champagne, the humiliation. A little startup, my brother had said, smirking as everyone laughed along. The memory used to sting. Now it just made me smile. "Ma'am," a voice said softly behind me. It was Miguel, the same kind face I remembered from that night, only now he wore a manager's badge. "Are you still working late?" He grinned. "Habit, I guess. It's hard to leave when the boss never goes home." "Fair," I said, laughing quietly. He shifted awkwardly, holding his mop like a walking stick. I wanted to thank you again for the promotion. Never thought I'd be managing a team of 15 cleaners across 4 buildings." "You earned it," I said sincerely. "And for what it's worth, you were the first person to ever call me ma'am. It meant more than you know." He chuckled. "That night I thought I'd be fired for speaking up in front of all those rich folks." "Quite the opposite," I said. "You made history, Miguel." He nodded, still smiling, then excused himself to finish his rounds. When the door closed behind him, I turned back to the window. My reflection stared back, steadier now, older, sharper. The woman who once hid her success out of fear of being mocked had learned something crucial. Power isn't loud. It's quiet. It's controlled. It doesn't demand validation. It simply is. My phone buzzed. A text from Lucas. "Dinner tonight. Just us. No drama." I smiled faintly. It had been almost a year since the last family dinner, the one that ended everything. And now, somehow, we were starting again. When I arrived at the small restaurant he'd chosen in Tribeca, I barely recognized him. The suit was gone. He wore a simple gray sweater, jeans, and an expression that looked peaceful. "Elena," he said, standing as I approached. "Thanks for coming." "Of course," I said, sitting. "How's Denver different?" he said, smiling. "Good different. I'm consulting for a healthcare nonprofit now. Nothing flashy, but it feels honest." I studied him, noticing the calm in his tone, the lack of pretense. "I'm glad." He hesitated, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded paper. "I wanted to show you something." He slid it across the table. It was a letter and offer of employment from Astralink Denver, one of our new expansion offices. Position Project Development Associate. "You applied?" I asked. He nodded. "Under a different name. I wanted to see if I could make it through the process on my own. Turns out your team doesn't play favorites." I couldn't help but laugh softly. "I trained them well." They offered me the job last week, he said. I haven't accepted yet. I wanted to tell you first. I looked at him carefully. If you take it, you'll be working under the company I built. No shortcuts, no special treatment. He nodded. I wouldn't want any. For the first time in years, I believed him. We spent the rest of the meal talking not about money or titles or the past, but about life. About how things could start over when you stopped pretending. When the check came, he tried to grab it, but I shook my head. This time I said it's on me. He smiled. Just this time. Later that night, as I walked back to my car, the city lights reflected off the snow, scattering like stardust. My phone buzzed again, Nora sending updates about the Astra Foundation's latest scholarship program. We'd just funded our 10th round of women-led startups. Real ideas, real innovation. And for the first time, I realized that what I had built was more than revenge. It was redemption not just for me, but for every person who'd ever been underestimated. When I got home, I found a small package waiting at my door. No return address. Inside was a vintage fountain pen, sleek black, engraved with the words, "She built it herself." There was only one note inside in my father's unmistakable handwriting. "Proud of you." No signature. Just that. I held the pen for a long time. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't reconciliation. But it was a start. Over the next few months, things settled into a rhythm. Astralink's IPO exceeded projections, our ethical foundation gained traction, and the media's fascination with the woman who owned the building began to fade into legend. But I never forgot where it began. Sometimes late at night I'd visit Crown Tower's rooftop, the place where my humiliation had transformed into power. From up there, the city didn't look judgmental. It looked infinite. One evening, as the sun dipped below the skyline, Nora joined me. "Do you ever think about how far you've come?" she asked, handing me a glass of wine. "Every day," I said, "and sometimes I still can't believe it." She smiled. "You've built something rare. Not just a company, a legacy." "Maybe," I said, "but legacies only matter if they outlive ego." She raised her glass. "To outlive my ego." We clinked glasses and stood in silence, watching the city shimmer. Below us, the world moved on, unaware that a small moment of humiliation years ago had built this empire. When I finally left the rooftop, I felt something shift, not an ending, but a settling. The story that began with mockery had closed its circle with meaning. Back in my office, I opened my laptop and drafted a note to my team for the company newsletter. Astralink was born from doubt. From being told, "You can't." Every one of us has faced it, being underestimated, ignored, mocked. But the truth is, small beginnings often hide the biggest revolutions. Never forget that success isn't loud. It's steady. It's earned. And it belongs to those who keep building when no one believes in them. I hit send. Then I leaned back, took a deep breath, and looked out over my city, my skyline, my story. The snow kept falling soft and endless like forgiveness. And as the night deepened, I whispered to the quiet. To every woman they ever called small, keep building. Because sometimes revenge isn't about proving them wrong. It's about proving yourself right.